GDP target Canada committed to as a NATO member. Despite the promise to invest $6 billion in the Canadian Armed Forces, there's no plan to ensure that this NDP Liberal Socialist Alliance will follow through on any of its commitments. The Canadian Armed Forces is short 10,000 soldiers. There's no plan to develop and maintain the personnel the Canadian Armed Forces desperately needs. The fact is, this budget is dangerously inadequate to meet the needs of our armed forces. The Liberals have spent the last 6 years starving the military. This means Canada needs to make serious investments when it comes to purchasing equipment like fighter jets, polar icebreakers, submarines that can operate under the Arctic ice, frigates, and joint support ships. We don't even have any battleships to keep the belligerents offshore. With inflation at a 30-year high, the spending in this budget amounts to a cut. It'll do nothing to help defend ourselves in an increasingly unsafe world. Meanwhile, our allies, countries like Germany, Australia, and Finland, are taking their security seriously. They're stepping up by increasing defense spending. The Liberals have lied about investing billions of dollars in promised defense spending. We don't even know where the money earmarked for equipment purchase goes when purchases don't actually go through. According to the most recent public accounts, the Liberals lapsed $1.2 billion in defense spending in 2021 alone. A report released last month shows that from 2017 to 2021, there was a cumulative shortfall of almost $10 billion between what D&D spent on capital and what was originally planned. So where is that money all going? The fact that NDP members voted against a Conservative motion calling on Canada to increase our defense spending makes it clear that this socialist alliance can't be trusted to follow through on any funding commitments made to the budget. How can our NATO allies be confident that Canada will continue to be a trusted security partner when the NDP members of this socialist alliance government vote against the principle of meeting our NATO spending commitment? How can Canadians be confident in anything this Prime Minister says when his NDP partner regularly debates policies like phasing out the Canadian Armed Forces? When it comes to important measures like keeping Canada secure in the world, this socialist alliance cannot be trusted. The Canada Infrastructure Bank has been a massive failure by Liberal standards. They promised it would build infrastructure. They promised it would attract private investment. Trudeau claimed that for every tax dollar the bank spent, it would magically attract $4 from investors. So far, the bank has been a total bust. Nothing built. Just one project announcement. 0 private dollars. It's been such an abject failure, the Socialist Alliance has decided to do it again. Trudeau is creating another so-called independent agency to spur economic innovation. This is economic insanity. First of all, there is a major government ministry called Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. It used to be called Industry Canada. So they changed the name to literally include the word innovation. So what does this so-called innovation department do? Well, for one thing, they oversee Canada's regional economic development agencies. From east to west, they include the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions, Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, Federal Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario, Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, Prairies Economic Development Canada, and the Pacific Economic Development Agency of Canada. It also oversees the Canada Foundation for Innovation and the Canada Foundation for Sustainable Development Technology. The department, formerly known as Industry Canada, doesn't just hand out money to other mini bureaucracies to hand out money. Industry Canada itself hands out money too. There's the Industrial Research Assistance Program and the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Incentive Program. The National Research Council is another government department with its own innovation funding programs, and the list goes on and on. The only thing the Liberals seem to know how to innovate is new ways to spend your tax dollars. The Liberals need money. Giving money to groups friendly to the Liberal Party is how they buy votes. They could raise the income taxes or sales taxes, but the Liberals would lose votes. Taxing Canadians directly is not popular. Taxing foreigners is popular and does not lose votes, which is why Liberals are pushing a series of bills to tax foreigners, then send the money to Liberal-friendly groups. The side effect of this sneaky tax policy is censorship. Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, is the first step in a Liberal plan to tax foreign artists, actors, producers, and directors, then give that money to Liberal-approved artists, actors, producers, directors, lobbyists, and lawyers. The bill forces foreign streaming services to either produce movies and television shows in Canada or pay into a fund which is redistributed to groups which meet the government's definition of Canadian content. The problem is the large streaming companies like Netflix and Disney aren't going to see their profits cut to help out Trudeau. The large US companies will simply raise fees on Canadian subscribers. Foreign language streaming services, such as TFC from the Philippines or Hotstar from India, may not have enough Canadian subscribers to justify the extra expense. The result will be that these smaller companies will block Canadians from accessing their services. It's not just foreign language streamers. There are streaming services dedicated to Japanese animation, horror movies, documentaries, classic films, poker, motorsport, and new ones that come online every day. Each of these companies will be forced to either raise its fees for Canadians or block Canadians. The result of this Trudeau policy is both a tax as well as the censorship. The Trudeau Liberals have introduced Bill C-18, the Online News Act. Any website which provides access to news content must now pay news media companies. The media lobbying companies around this legislation has been nothing short of a disgrace to the idea of a free and independent media. Newspapers have been turned into propaganda pieces to push a fabricated claim that social media companies and search engines have been profiting from news media. The media are even censoring university professors who disagree with this bill. Once upon a time, newspapers and broadcasters made massive profits selling your attention to advertisers, rather than focus on providing the accurate and timely information which citizens require to participate in a democratic society. We got fear-mongering hype machines. Then along came a new business model. Companies such as Google provided free services from internet search to email in exchange for data to better target ads. Now, as anyone who has used Google to search for any commercially available item knows, your search result brings up ads. If you search for blue jeans, you'll find ads for blue jeans. If you are in the business of selling blue jeans and somebody tells you that you can advertise directly to people who are interested in buying blue jeans, or you can advertise on television or in a newspaper, and your ad will be seen by thousands who may not have all the blue jeans they need, where would you spend your ad budget? Businesses, big and small, flock to ads on search and social media because their ad budgets are spent more effectively. Legacy news media outlets do not want to admit their business model is badly broken, so they lied. The legacy news media claimed companies like Google and Facebook were profiting off their news content. As the online companies have said in the past, news articles make up a tiny fraction of the content people engage with online. Just compare the number of likes any local news story receives compared to the video you're watching right now. For the Liberals, it doesn't matter that the legacy news media are lying. The Liberals view the legacy news media as Liberal supporters, and Liberal supporters get handouts. Bill C-18 forces companies like Facebook and Google to negotiate with any news media outlet to receive that handout. Now, Professor Michael Geist described this as a shakedown. Give the legacy news media money or else. Facebook and Google are what the Socialist Alliance like to call web giants. Who do you think is going to pay for these handouts? Web giants or web users? Google and Facebook would simply pass along the cost to Canadian businesses. Canadian businesses will pass along the cost to Canadian consumers. And in the end, you always pay for the Liberal handouts. Just prior to Trudeau calling his super spreader pandemic election, the Liberals introduced a bill called the Online Harms Act. It was so terrible, it was denounced by nearly everybody who looked at it. The original legislation would have created an internet censorship czar with the power to order any website to be taken down within 24 hours. Independent Organizations, unions, business groups, left-wing activists, right-wing think tanks, socialists and libertarians all said the government needs to go back to the drawing board. Well, shocked by the widespread opposition to its legislation, the Socialist Alliance needed a new way to sell its censorship agenda, which is why the government announced a new panel of advisors to help them update this censorship law. One of the members of this panel is the chair of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, a radical organization funded by the Liberals. This is the same chair who spread anti-Semitic hate on Twitter and falsely claimed it had originated with the Freedom Convoy. This organization was instrumental in providing the legacy news media with the excuse to falsely label the Freedom Convoy as a hate group. They have even labeled traditional Catholics as a hate movement. They have given a platform to self-described radical socialist affiliated with an Antifa criminal who drove a truck into a Freedom Convoy protesters, into the Freedom Convoy protesters themselves in Winnipeg. These dangerous radicals are now helping the Liberal government decide what you can and cannot say on the internet. Here's the truth. Many on the left will claim that any opposition to the government's censorship agenda means you support hate speech, or hate Canadian artists, or hate the truth, as reported by the legacy news media. Of course, this is a lie, because most of these liberal policies are built on lies. Companies such as Netflix, Paramount, Amazon, Warner Brothers, and Apple are setting new records for the amount of film and television production happening in Canada. News media outlets who've made the switch from selling readers to advertisers and instead provide a product people will pay full price for are thriving and growing in Canada, such as Blacklocks or The Logic. A crime committed online is still a crime. Online crimes such as harassment, stalking, revenge porn, and human trafficking are already illegal. We need more resources for the police and prosecutors to go after these criminals. With bills like C-11 and C-18, the government is inventing problems just to justify real tax and the censorship policies. With bills like the Online Harms Act, the government is ignoring real crimes by relabeling them as online harms. Conservatives have made this case with this Socialist Alliance, and Trudeau will have 3 more years to force these bills into law. The only way we can stop the socialist agenda is to get people in Liberal ridings to call or write to their MPs. Tell them what you think. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.